Welcome back to Anime Lockdown. I'm proud to present oh goodness, I don't have it in front of me and it's a black screen. It's something about Convoluted, Garzey's Wing, the past 25 years. Is that something? Oh goodness. Rex Nabours the third. Welcome to Anime Lockdown.
Hey everybody. I'm going to roll that wonderful wing footage real quick. Oops.
Aren't you hot with such heavy clothes? Why do you have to go back to your hometown now? You failed the college entrance exam twice now.
It doesn't matter. I will come back after I attend the class reunion pool party tomorrow, Rumiko.
You are so easygoing.
My necklace is rattling. I wonder, could it be the Shiratori Shrine? Shiratori? This must be the place where Yamato Takeru no Mikoto came down from the sky. What? What the heck is this now? Ah! Ah!
Welcome to making sense of our convoluted situation. Garzey's Wing 25 years later. I'm so excited to present this panel to y'all. Y'all have no idea. So real quick, I'm going to breeze through the introduction because we have a lot of slides to get through and I actually had to cut some stuff. So what this panel's not going to be, because I got a lot of DMs and stuff over the last week or so after this got announced, I'm not going to be doing an hour of haha, this anime is terrible. So I know a lot of people were wondering what's actually going to happen, but no, we're going to be going into deep Garzey's Wing, Biston Well, and Tomino lore. So I hope you're all excited for that. There's a lot more to the story than, oh, it's so bad. So, I mean, no one really ever sets out to make bad things on purpose. There's always some sort of shenanigans that happen, and from what I can tell, there's a decent bit of wacky things that happen. So, little bit about me. My name is Rex, and I run a website called BeyondElectricSheep.com that's mostly focused on anime video games, but sometimes I write about other stuff too. You can find me on the Bird website at Our Neighbors III. After the presentation, I will be doing a very lengthy tweet thread of sources and further reading too. So, yeah, let's get going with the content. We're gonna start off by talking a little bit about Tomino for those who don't know the deep lore, I guess. So he was born in November 5th, 1941, and he started working at Mushi Pro in 1963, doing screenwriting and storyboarding on Astro Boy. And then he made his directorial debut in 1973 with Triton of the Sea, which was based on Tezuka's manga Blue Triton. Then he wound up at Sunrise. He directed the last 11 episodes of... by the way, this is a very jargon-heavy panel, and I'm about to butcher so many words during this, so just stick with me here. It'll be fine. La Sienne no Hoshi, which was an adaptation of, I believe it was an Italian film by Alain Delon, Le Tulip Noir, The Black Tulip. And then he did a bunch of other stuff. Adventures of Pepero, which I couldn't find any evidence of Sunrise actually working on that, so he may have been a contractor. Who knows at this point, but he storyboarded a few episodes of that. He directed the first 26 episodes of Brave Radine. produced Super Electromagnetic Machine Voltes V. He did Invincible Superman Zambot 3, he wrote and directed that, and this is also where he got his super cool nickname Kill 'Em All Tomino, because he has the habit of killing off all of his characters and everything. Normal stuff. Invincible Stillman Daytarn 3, he also wrote and directed. And then he did this other show that you may have heard of, Mobile Suit Gundam. Gundam, he created and wrote and directed and everything, and it was, as we all know, a hugely successful franchise that is still going. And after that, he got to do a bunch of other stuff. But before that, I want to point out that he didn't even want to work in anime. He wanted to make movies at first, as mentioned in this interview that we're going to be seeing a lot of over the next hour or so with America from February 2000, where he talks about some choice quotes from all of this, and I will link to the scans of the interview after the presentation. He's not an animator, he's a director, and there's a difference. And he became a director because it was the only job he took. He needed to pay bills, basically. He didn't even see, at the time, Disney being competition to him. He considered his competition to be Steven Spielberg, and yeah. Anyways, after Gundam, he got to make a bunch of other stuff. Space Runaway Ideon, Blue Gale Zabungle, and then the one that we're going to be talking about the most during this panel, Aura Battler Dunbine. So, what is Biston Well and what is Dunbine? Biston Well is a world created from emotion. It's basically European fantasy, but also it's got mechs in it. It's super cool. Dunbine premiered in February 1983 and ran for almost a year, 59 episodes. It was one of the, if not the first isekai, except just kidding, no it was not, and I don't have a slide for it, but the first isekai technically was Urashima Taro, which was released in 1918, but like the vast majority of film from the time, it's lost, and we only know about it due to cinema journals from the time that aren't lost. So Dunbine kind of set up a lot of the basic like isekai stuff. The protagonist, Sozama, he gets isekai'd into Biston Well during a traffic accident. His motorcycle flies up and he gets sucked into a portal. Then he has to fight stuff with his bug mech. The mechs are really cool. They're all like insect-like and kind of smaller than normal regular mechs. I wanted to go much deeper into the lore, but I got carried away a little bit. The important thing to know is that fairies in Biston Well world are called Filario, and they just do mischief, and they're kind of mascot characters, and people don't like them sometimes, and we're going to see some cruel Filario stuff when we get to Garzey's Wing. But yeah, Biston Well, they revisited it again without Tomino in 1988 with Tale of Neo Biston Well, which I have not watched, but it takes place 700 years later, and all of the main characters are reincarnations of the original characters, pretty much. But while this was going on, and during the... My notes got a little unorganized, it looks like. While this was going on / during and before Aura Battler Dunbine, Tomino, he's also a very accomplished novelist, and over the course of the beginning of Dunbine and after, wrote 24 novels set in Biston Well. so many novels. Rings of Reen was a 4-volume novel that actually he started, according to the liner notes from the DVDs of the later adaptation, which we're going to talk about more later. He started actually before Or Battler Dunbine started, and then when he needed to pitch a new show, he was just like, oh, I'm going to pitch the thing I'm writing on right now, but I'm going to add mechs to it so we can sell it. And then he did 4 volumes of Talafalfal. The Or Battler Chronicles novels are actually his own retelling of basically what he wanted to have happen during the TV series. It's completely different. None of these have ever been translated, by the way, so I'm going off of summaries that I was able to find online from people who did read or skim through them. And then he did, as we can see at the bottom, he did 11 of these Or Battler Chronicles ones, and then Garzey's Wing, he wrote in the mid-90s, and it's 5 volumes long. And that definitely affected how the anime played out quite a bit, as we're going to find out in a minute. Also, yeah, I just glanced at the chat. The Odyssey was definitely the first isekai. So let's talk about the making of Garzey's Wing, or what we know of it, because there isn't a whole lot of information out there on this, and we'll find out why momentarily. But our 2 main sources, for the most part, until the end, are going to be the interview he did with On America talking about it, which was as far as I can tell, the only interview he's given outside of the Wings of Reen liner notes, where he actually talked about Garzey's Wing for more than a couple minutes. He doesn't really like to talk about it, and we're going to find out why in just a moment. So, first of all, Sunrise was not involved in this at all, which is really interesting because you would think that since they had made Dunbine, they would have been involved, but they weren't, and I can't find any information on the nitty-gritty of it. We probably will never know unless someone straight up asks Tomino himself, which probably never happened. There's a fairly good chance he owns the rights to Biston Well himself, so that's really cool. So, bye-bye Sunrise. Garzey's Wing was a co-production between TV Tokyo, BMG Japan, JC Staff, ASCII, and also, too, as we will find out later in the slides, Sanctuary. I could not find a whole lot of information on this animation studio. They did 8-Man After, Landlock, and worked with JC Staff to animate Garzey's Wing, and then I guess disappeared. And I've been looking for months trying to figure out more about them, and I can't really find a whole lot. And then the really interesting one is Sunseibu. Apparently, this was the only anime Sunseibu ever worked on, but according to the Game Development Research Institute, they primarily worked on game development with Vic Tokai, but that was well before Garzey's Wing happened. And by the time Garzey's Wing was happening, they were mostly making hardware. Like this picture on the left is a device they made for Japanese arcades. It's essentially a Sega Saturn jukebox, and you can pop in like 7 Sega Saturn games in there, and players can just go to the arcade, put their coin in, and they can test out Saturn games. They had some sort of connection to they're even mentioned in the English translated credits on the DVD. So maybe they're going to make a Garzey's Wing video game adaptation. I don't know. That would have been really wild to see. I would hope it was just a bad brawler with dialogue boxes that take up the entire screen, because that would be the most fitting thing that could have happened. Real quick, though, I'm going to go back to this slide because the other interesting thing is TV Tokyo's involvement. They have not really been involved with things that didn't air on TV Tokyo. Like even their OVAs, their direct-to-video stuff, was spin-offs of TV Tokyo stuff. So there's common speculation that this was meant to be a TV series. Given how violent Garzey's Wing gets at times, there's speculation even that it could have been, because it was also came out right around the time the big late night anime push started. So a lot of people think this could have been a TV pilot, but we don't know for sure because they never talk about it. So skip ahead to some staff that worked on this. The animation direction was handled by Noboru Sugemitsu, who at the time definitely best known for the key animation on the first episode of Bubblegum Crisis. There's actually quite a few Bubblegum Crisis alumni that worked on this. And then the music was Shiro Sagisu, who he did a really, really neat show a couple years before this that some of y'all might know. He did all the music for Evangelion. And then Kenichi Onuki. Okay, so one of my favorite bits of Garzey's Wing trivia is on the back of the DVD release. He's credited, I guess, because he just did character design for Garzey's Wing, and he also did character design for Wrath of the Ninja. Kind of forgotten about a show that Central Park Media also released at the same time. So I guess they were doing a cross-promotion thing, but he did so many other things. He's still working, and he's done so many things since then. But before Garzey's Wing, he did a bunch of other shows you've probably seen, including MD Geist, Tokimeki Tonight, Dream Hunter Rim, AI City, Venus Wars, and oh, they're just all piling up on the screen. He did so many things, and they chose to advertise Wrath of the Ninja instead. It's so good. So also, too, I missed in my notes, the VA for Chris, the main character, was Tetsuya Ainaga, who was also an Evangelion alum. He played Kinsuke. He was also Guy and Ken in the Street Fighter games until Street Fighter 3. And Rumiko, the girl in the intro who delivered the "You're so easygoing" line, she played Mima in Perfect Blue, and she was also in Evangelion. She played Hikari. She's probably best known either for Perfect Blue or as Kazuko from Madoka. So let's get into that sweet production info. So Masashi Kudo, he would later go on to be a character designer for Wings of Rain, but he talks a little bit about Garzey's Wing in the Wings of Rain liner notes. Which, by the way, those DVDs are really, I think they're really nice. Bandai put them out when they did Honemai's, their label where they kind of tried to be Criterion, but a lot of the stuff they put out was not very good. The packaging, however, is incredible, and every show comes with extremely detailed liner note booklets, and I love that stuff, and they printed so many of them and sold so little that you can get them like on Right Stuff clearance sales. You can get them for about $1 a DVD. And outside of Gunbuster 2 and the Gunbuster and Diebuster movies, I don't think any of the rest of the shows they put out got relicensed. So highly recommend picking those up at some point. Their Wings of Rain cost me $3 like 2 years ago. It was money well spent just for these booklets. But yeah, he took Masashi Kudo worked on Garzey's Wing because he was a Dunbine fan and he liked fantasy. He'd later go on to do Wings of Rain because he felt bad that he only got to be involved with Garzey's Wing as an animator, and he talks about he gives a very, very brief anecdote about working with Tomino around that time, where he was animating a shot where Filario shows pain when pulled by the arm, which I believe is towards the end of episode 2 of Garzey's Wing, if you really want to go find this exact scene later on. But Tomino gave him a note that said, this part is manga, so manga style is fine. And it gave him the idea, so depending on the circumstances, we can adjust the degree of reality, and maintains the same standard for Wings of Reen. Garzey's Wing is a really weird looking show at times, and you can really kind of see where Tomino was probably like, oh yeah, that's fine, we can make it look like a cartoon, particularly when the Filario are around. It looks like a different show sometimes when there's just fighting or exposition going on. So then we're back to the Animerica interview with Tomino, when he talks about returning to Garzey's Wing, and the next slide's going to expand on that quite a bit, but when he's asked about Garzey's Wing regularly, he usually has historically responded that he doesn't really want to talk about it, or that he wasn't feeling good at the time. And in this one, he starts off with, I was out of energy at that point. I was sick. I didn't have the energy while I was making it. And he wasn't really happy with how Garzey's Wing came out, because of course he wasn't. We're going to we'll find out why in a minute. If you haven't already watched it. But his main gripe about it was that it turned out so cute that he thought it was bad. But overall, even though he wasn't happy, he was okay about it. My favorite line, though, when he watches them all together, he gets the feeling that there's something wrong with the main character. I wonder why. We'll find out momentarily. And he definitely blames himself for the way it turned out almost entirely, because as he says, when he's asked if it's the director's responsibility or the animator's, the way it turned out that he did, he completely blames himself and says that everything lies in the planning. Almost all responsibility lies in the planning stage. And then a little bit later, he mentions that he's been very sick, he's been depressed, and he didn't have time to watch anything good, even though back in 92 at an Anime Expo panel, he said that to make good anime, you have to watch good anime for at least 3 years. And during the time he made Garzey's Wing, he didn't really watch anything but plays, but he did watch Evangelion and Princess Mononoke, and a couple other things that he didn't pay attention to. Mostly he was watching plays. So that brings us to our next source, which I just found out about maybe a month ago. I want to give a shout out to Fees from Moon's Cocoon, Turn A Gundam fan site that has popped up very recently. This site is absolutely incredible, the work that this person's doing. Translating so many articles and interviews, and there's even a book that Tomino wrote about this time and battling with his depression and stuff that Fees is translating. I will link to it in that Twitter thread afterward. I highly recommend looking at it, and honestly, if there is any justice in the world, Garzey's Wing would be nothing but a footnote in the story of the making of Turn A Gundam. But things happen, history works out really weird sometimes, and I'm here talking to you about Garzey's Wing today. So let's dig into this real quick. So the big key part of this story, I feel, is that right before he took his break and left Sunrise and started working on Garzey's Wing, Tomino did Victory Gundam, which is a show that seems like decently regarded by fans, but he hated it. He hated working with Bondi, mostly from what it seems like. Because at this point, I mean, he didn't want to be making anime in the first place, number one, and two, it pretty much had Gundam had turned into a massive merchandising machine, and he didn't really have a whole lot of control over it anymore, and was pretty much the veil had been lifted, and he realized that he was just making toy commercials, and he was very upset. Even it mentions many years later in the Victory Gundam DVD box, he includes a message, "Don't buy these DVDs because you should not watch them." And he fell into a depression, socially isolated himself, started suffering from severe anxiety if he left the house, and was just really having a bad time. So he basically, for a while, he did acupuncture. He played a lot of Puzzle Bobble on Super Nintendo, which I relate to so much because that's also my comfort game. Every day. And he wrote a couple of novels, Look for Avenir, King's Heart, and Garzey's Wing. So Garzey's Wing was just a very small part in what he was doing. He wound up, he began working with Marigold Management, which was a Nintendo company that was later involved. I believe they were involved in Earthbound a little bit. There really wasn't a whole lot that he wound up doing that came to market with them, from what I could tell. But they did give him mental health assistance, which is amazing. And then let's go back to talking about those plays that he saw. During his years of depression, Tomino looked inward, particularly to the women in his life. His mental health assistant was a woman, and he regularly relied on his wife for moral and physical support. Raising two teenage young adult daughters also proved to be an influence. The Tomino household was predominantly dominated by women, and his previous patriarchal mindset began to change as his eyes opened to the challenges young women faced in modern society. His daughters' likes and dislikes and their forays into the performing arts, dance and theater, had tremendous impact on him. He began to find interest in all-female theater troupes, and his views on gender and sexuality evolved. So, I don't know how many of y'all caught the Sakura Wars panel last night, but the part with the stage shows, that's what he was doing pretty much instead of watching anime, and good for him. It really shows up a lot in Turn A Gundam, which it's not on any streaming services, but I do highly recommend watching that if you get a chance. It's really interesting. Also, Sid Mead did the mech designs for it, and it does feel at times, sometimes like Garzey's Wing if it was not Garzey's Wing. So back to those Wings of Rain liner notes too. He gets asked at one point, the Biston Well universe deeply reflects your ideals. Revisiting that once more could be seen as something positive, couldn't it? And this is very key to understanding why he went back to Biston Well so much in the first place, not just during his bout with depression, but also before then. It's a universe that he created himself, so he has total control over it, and it's a world that he remembered not being fully brought to fruition. So even by the time Wings of Reen, the anime, came out in 2006, so even then he was still like, we need to literally revisit the well, which I thought was really cool. He also, though, too, states that the name Biston Well has a really nice ring to it, and if he didn't like the name, he probably wouldn't have been compelled to stay with it as long. Yeah. He wrote so much Biston Well, I can't imagine, going back to it later and being like, I still need to flesh it out more, but hey, I'm not the one writing it, so... So now that we've got some background, let's talk about what happens in Garzey's Wing real quick for those of you who haven't seen it, or those of you who have seen it and it's been a few years, or those of you who have watched it recently and still don't know what's going on, because it is an extremely I mean, he was trying to compress. I'm sure it doesn't, all 3 episodes don't cover all 5 novels, because 2 of them released after the series had been released. But it at least compresses several of them into an hour and a half. And yeah, it's extremely dense show. Let me click over to my other. So, as we saw in the intro to the panel, we meet Christopher Senshu as he's preparing to embark on a trip to his high school reunion pool party via motorcycle. Also, it's only been a year since he graduated high school, and he's studying for his college entrance exams. He argues with his friend / possible significant other, Rumiko, who calls him easygoing as an insult, and rides really fast down the freeway, past the Shiritori Shrine, where the legendary prince and 12th Emperor of Japan, Yamato Takeru, dropped from the sky. His necklace begins rattling, and a gigantic, glowing, mystical goose immediately flies into him and whisks his naked body away to Biston Well, kind of. Because, as you might have been able to tell before I cut it on the intro, he still drives off on the motorcycle somehow. I do want to talk about the goose real quick, because it's something, there's a lot of articles and videos out there basically roasting Garzey's wing and like attempts at Mystery Science Theater 3000 sort of stuff. And a very common thing that gets brought up is the goose being lol so random. I tried to cram some research into the symbolism of Garzey's wing over the last couple weeks, because I realized I haven't really looked into the actual things that happen during the show as much as I have the production history and such. I spent an entire evening looking through JSTOR for various things that I thought might be of interest, and I did find out that and the only reason I think this is even semi-relevant is because the Biston Well universe as a whole is very steeped in European medieval trappings. But in Celtic Christianity, a goose is the symbol of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is a very the Holy Spirit across various religions is a big theme that pops up throughout Garzey's wing. And in a book called Prophetic Ethics, Baylor University professor Robert B. Kruszwitz states that sometimes God's spirit hovers comfortingly like a dove, but the spirit also surprises us and disturbs our plans. Like a wild and unpredictable goose, the Holy Spirit sweeps in unexpectedly, pulling you in astonishing directions. And that's way more thought than anybody has put into this goose section probably since Garzey's wing came out. So Chris falls through a portal. A voice that potentially may be the narrator beckons him to show him the ancient Japanese man's spirit, and to use the power of the earth, water, and Amida. Amida is referring to Amitabha, the principal Buddha of Pure Land Buddhism, also known as the Buddha of immeasurable light and life. Chris asks if the voice is Yamato Takeru's and doesn't get an answer. And some women reading books in the portal comment on how there's a man falling down. They look like normal women, but thanks to the handy-dandy dub script included on Central Park Media's DVD release of the series, we know that they're Filario, even though they just look like normal women hanging out in a portal reading books, as people tend to do. And then another Filario winds up getting stuck to his necklace on the way down, and they fall through the portal. Chris grows wings from his feet, and they land in front of this giant dinosaur, which the Filario states is a Daragao, because we know what we're supposed to do with that information, I guess. Some peasant-looking people, led by a woman named Laurent, see Chris and notice that it looks like he's got Garzey's wing. Chris begins to fight the dudes that were with the Dargo with a stick while he's still, naked. He has no clothes yet. While this is happening, the Filario introduces herself as Fallen Fa, and the peasants begin calling Chris the Holy Warrior and commenting on how skilled of a fighter he is. We also find out through context clues, I guess, the fairies are called Filarios, and we find out that the peasants are speaking a completely different language than Chris's native Japanese, but he can speak with them through his mind. Then this woman appears, her name is Hassan, and she states that she used an earthenware bell to summon Chris to Biston Well. She gives Chris what looks like a potato sack with holes in it to cover himself so he doesn't have to fight naked and more fighting happens. And I want to note that everything I've just described is just the first 3.5 minutes of the first episode. The dialogue is there's so much of it. It's so complicated. It's really hard to understand what's going on. I'm going to have to start skipping stuff. So he fights a bunch. He fights a whole bunch. They're escaping. We find out that he's leading thousands of slaves on a rebellion. This guy's name is King Fungen. And the slaves escape. They get chased by pterodactyls and these horses that are actually unicorns. Actually, they're called... I can't find where I put the notes. They're called Bonduron. But they use horse and Bonduron for them interchangeably. The pterodactyls are Banzudos. And also the pterodactyls are dropping explosives on the slaves. And we later find out that the explosives are made with a compound called Gata. It's also called gunpowder. And they call it gunpowder half the time too. This guy is Zaguzo. He's the big bad. He reports to King Fungen that they're going to try and declare the Metamus tribe, which is the slaves that escaped. They're going to try and declare war under the Great Barju Tree, and they're probably going to win because it's a leap year. They explain it in a way more wordier fashion that still only takes about a minute long, and it needs to be seen to believe, but that's not the clip I'm about to roll. They fight bugs. The bugs have names. I don't remember if we find out where they are. They're on a raft. And then smash cut to Chris arriving at his grandma's house. So something's going on. He's also still in the real world. Is it a hallucination? Who knows? He visits with his mom and his grandma at his parents' house, and then we smash cut to they're off the raft and they're kind of vibing on the island. We get more exposition, and then we get what is my opinion, the ultimate Garzey's wing scene, the one that I got the title of this panel from. I'm not even going to describe it. I'm just going to roll the footage.
Oh, my body is aching. What happened? I was bruised all over my body because I had to fight naked. Mom told me I have bruises all over my body. Is there any connection to this? There is a war going on. Even dinosaurs are here. And they use bows and arrows. My sword is unbelievably dull. If you die over there, what will happen to me back here? I don't know whether our body and mind are split. I don't know how we got separated, but I think we are still one person. We die together? Probably. No, it can't be true! I'm not joking. 12th and 13th century foreigners surround me. I must somehow make sense of our convoluted situations. If you say you're in an Aura world, then I have to strengthen my mind. I must do chi, spiritual unification, and practice Zen meditation. I'm being chased by a real army! Huh? I know. I will do that here. Please do so.
So Chris immediately after that does the sensible thing, and he looks up how to make gunpowder. Some more stuff happens. He heads off to the high school reunion pool party. Don't watch the scene again. Please go back to the next. What if I just loop that for the next 20 minutes? It would be terrible. But yeah, so we start off with episode 2 with Chris is riding a Bonduron really badly, and he says a line about falling off on purpose to protect the horse's feelings. More exposition. At this point in time, all of the dialogue in the series is completely full of jargon. And we've got like Zabuza at some point says something like, he can control a dagger all with gabagool. It just gets, it's so incredible. But real quick before we move on, I want to talk about the high school reunion pool party, which we see about halfway through episode 2. The exact halfway point of the series. I'm not going to spoil too much of it because I would hope at this point, if you haven't watched Garzey's Wing yet, you're itching to watch it. Chris is acting really weird at this pool party, but we don't really know if it's just how he was written or what's going on. He's got weird bruises on him, they find out. His line he says to his friend, though, I regrettably did not get a clip of this, but she just pops out of the water and is like, "Hey, Chris." And he's like, "You sure look sexy," in a very matter-of-fact, confident voice. And that is also what is in the Japanese dub too. Like, that's just canon that he says that. So yeah, the show goes places. And also too, right after that, we're introduced to this character is just named Talrod. It's spelled differently. It's spelled Tawrad, but yeah, he's just called Talrod. Also, too, I was looking at the chat while we were watching the clip of Chris in his bedroom, and I did forget to mention that this is technically a prequel to Dunbine. Now we come to part 3, which is, honestly, if there was no English dub, we wouldn't be talking about Garzey's Wing 25 years later. So let's talk about how Central Park Media brought real magic to Biston Well. Go back to my other notes. So Central Park Media licensed it in 98, advertised it throughout 99 at con panels, but didn't release it until the beginning of 2000 under US Manga Corps. So a quick note that'll provide context for later parts of the panel too. Garzey's Wing was released in 2000. Aura Battler Dunbine didn't come out over here until 2003, so a lot of people went into watching Garzey's Wing not knowing that it was a spinoff of something else. And it also didn't help that it was just advertised by the creator of Gundam, too. So, and I'll talk about that more a little later. Lol. The dub was handled by AudioWorks, which is a company in New York that's still around. They did DNA Squared, Genocyber, but only episodes 4 and 5, which I just watched for the first time a couple months ago when the Blu-ray came out, and also worth watching if you like the Garzey's Wing dub. They did MD Geist, Harmageddon, but most importantly, they did at least a third, if not more, of Central Park Media's Anime 18 titles. Because, and I'm sure the old heads know it, but for the younger ones in the crowd, all of the anime companies pretty much at the time that were releasing stuff also had separate labels where they were putting out hentai and mostly used the same VAs and production staff for that. And at least 2 of these companies are still around today. So that's cool. The dub was directed by Kip Kaplan, who handled all of the AudioWorks titles and some stuff at another studio, Beach Street, who did dubs for like Golf Force 2 and 3. He still works there, but they don't really do anime anymore. This is their website as it looks now. They do a lot of other foreign cartoons, though, and they do a lot of non-anime work. Also, I do want to note that Garzey's Wing is not on his IMDb page, but a lot of the Anime 18 stuff is. And also, he did a lot of voice work on his stuff under both his regular name, Barry Banner, and Bat Mackerel. which must be some sort of end joke because I could not figure out what was going on there. So let's talk about some of the dub actors real quick. Chris was played by this guy, Rick Nagel, who only did a few other anime roles. His biggest one probably was Yusuke Urameshi in the Yu Yu Hakusho Poltergeist Report movie. He's a location scout now for Food Network and NBC Universal, and he's worked on some big stuff. He did a lot of Top Chef, apparently. But one of my other weird favorite bits of Garzey's Wing trivia was around the time of Garzey's Wing, he filmed this movie called The Blur of Insanity with his co-star Josh Leonard from the Blair Witch Project, which was blowing up around this time too. I have not seen this movie. It looks very awful, but the guys who made it were very hellbent on making it a big college movie. It's basically about a bunch of college kids that are like, I don't want to go to college anymore, and do a bunch of drugs and shoot guns. From what I can tell on the trailers, got More Human Than Human with by White Zombie playing, and I don't know if they actually licensed it for it or not. But you can still buy it on Amazon, and more importantly, the website's still up, and eventually at some point they stopped trying to advertise the movie, although they'd still plug it. And they were still like adding to the website like 10 years after. And they tried to kind of turn it into a like Tucker Max or Maddox kind of thing. And it's just so bad. So also to Rumiko, the girl that at the beginning says you're so easygoing, is played by Suzanne Savoy, who she did have a lot more anime roles. She was in Agent Aika and Angel Sanctuary. So she's actually a very accomplished actress. She's an alumni of Upright Citizens Brigade, Royal National Theatre of Great Britain, the National Theatre School of Canada, and University of Houston. And for my other Houston peeps, she was married to the guy that ran the Hobby Theater for many years. And she would later go on to be in a bunch of prestige TV shows like House of Cards, The Nick. She was in Better Call Saul, which I just finished watching season 4. And I was like, oh, hey, it's the Garzey's Wing lady. And she even did like a really like fancy prestige one-woman play about the life and works of France's first professional female author, Christine de Pizan. And she translated Christine de Pizan's manuscripts herself and performed the piece at universities, libraries, museums, and all sorts of non-traditional venues. But also, too, one time in an anime, she said, you're so easygoing. So that's cool. And then our other cast includes Roxanne Beck as Flan Fa, who actually pretty accomplished voice actress too, best known as Vulpix from Pokemon, but she was also Lum in the Urusei Yatsura Beautiful Dreamer dub. Amanda Goodman, aka Mandy Bonham, played Lee Lentz. She was Juri in Utna. There's a lot of crossover with Utna too. Roxanne Beck was in that. The guy that played Reggie-Ro, Tim Breese, after Garzey's Wing, went on to be in the Metropolitan Opera Chorus, and has since post Garzey's Wing done 500 performances of the Phantom of the Opera in German. And then Gregster, who played Zagazo, he is probably best known for, we talked about, or last night, if you were there for the 18 plus panel, Urutsuki Doji popped up a lot. This guy straight up played the Overfiend. So that's cool. Don't have much time left, so let's go through some reviews and stuff at the time and talk about release history real quick. All right, so the first VHS and DVD came out in 2000, but it was discontinued in 2004 along with some other Central Park Media titles that they were practically having to give away, like Battle Arena Toshinden and Voltage Fighter Galkaiser. Then they re-released it later that year at a budget price of $10. Judging by how easy it is to find now for not very much money, they still didn't sell a whole lot. Also, too, at some point, they included it in a double pack with Legend of Lemnir. And then on top of that, they included, I couldn't find an actual price on this, but they included it in a set that they sold on Right Stuff and through Best Buy, 12 other titles. Some of them actually pretty nice, like Venus Wars and Demon City Shinjuku. Those are actually still in print, so that's cool. Venus Wars got a really nice Blu-ray set actually a couple months ago. It's out of print, it looks like. So I have been trying to find Garzey's Wing like reviews from the time for a very long time, and I've looked for all of the through all the regular sources and everything, like rectarts.anime.misc. But pretty much the general consensus was people watched it and it was bad and didn't really feel the need to talk about it too much until much later. Really liked this Anime News Network forum post though from around 2002, before isekai became, before every anime became isekai basically. They describe it as a cross. They do mention that it's placed in Dunbine, but they mention that it's like a cross between Fushigi Yugi and a really bad fantasy movie. And then there's this review from anime on DVD.com that I'll link to in the Twitter thread. This one really doesn't mention Dunbine at all, because of course it doesn't, and is just kind of like, oh, it's bad. And then this animeworld.com one, which again, isekai is not really a thing people talk about, and neither is Dunbine, but they do mention if you want to see more equally bad fantasy, check out Panzer Dragoon, which don't watch Panzer Dragoon. Don't do it. So then, after all of this, luckily there's tons of copies of Garzey's Wing out in the wild still, because the big DVD boom happens, and after the Musicland bankruptcy in 2006 that wound up killing off a lot of home video distributors, also got Central Park Media, but they managed to stay afloat until 2009 somehow. They didn't release anything at all in 2008, and it's kind of faded away. But a lot of their licenses got rescued. You know what didn't get rescued, though, was Garzey's Wing. It's a bummer. So, real quick epilogue for talk about Wings of Reen really quick. Eventually, Tomino wound up back at Sunrise, and he made Brain Powered, which we're not really going to talk a whole lot about because we don't have much time. But Brain Powered's kind of wonky too in different ways from Garzey's Wing. And that interview on America was mostly actually about Brain Powered. After Brain Powered, though, he did turn A Gundam, and it kind of kicked him back into legendary director Yoshiyuki Tomino mode. And then in 2005, he got the chance to return to Biston Well again and finally adapt the first novel that he wrote, Wings of Reen, into a 6-episode series exclusive to Bandai's Bandai Channel service. It premiered directly on the internet, and over here it got licensed by Onimis and put out on really fancy DVDs. It also is not... It's of dubious quality, and it didn't get dubbed. So it just kind of has gotten forgot about, because at least Garzey's Wing had a fun dub to watch. No one really talks about Wings of Reen anymore. That's kind of sad, because judging from the liner notes, it does kind of feel like he wanted it to be his magnum opus, and it just kind of got overshadowed by Garzey's Wing, which we are still talking about today. So, yeah. that's all I got for now. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Anime Lockdown, for letting me talk about Garzey's Wing for an hour. That was cool.
It's my pleasure. It was illuminating.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, you can find me online at beyondelectricsheep.com or on Twitter at ourneighborsii. I will very shortly be putting up a tweet thread with sources and further reading. And when the video on demand version of the panel is up, I will have that on the site with all of the links too. So it'll have a place to live forever, or until I decide to stop paying for hosting. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a copy of this if you want to put it on your website, just in case YouTube snipes it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much for that. Want to shout out all my friends that tuned into, and yeah, stick around. The next panel's Ultraman, and it was Ultraman weekend, so it works out perfect.
Well, cool. If you want, there's time for maybe 2 questions. Otherwise, we can wrap it up and go to break early. It's up to you.
Yeah, we can take some questions.
Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes. So we'll see. Excuse me. We'll give the chat a couple seconds to catch up and think of anything. I have to say, this might be the final nail in the coffin that gets me to watch this. I've always heard of it, and I've heard of its infamy, but I've always avoided watching it because of its infamy.
You should do it. I've watched it. I watched it at first because of its infamy, and then something about like just the sheer amount of jargon-filled dialogue that happens, and everybody just kind of trying to not flub their way through it, really hooked me in a way that a lot of things don't. Is there any reason to watch Garzey's Wing in Japanese from Land of Obscusion? Honestly, I don't think so. It doesn't work. At least for English-speaking audiences, I don't think it works very well because it is, like, all of the dialogue is just exposition, and you're going to have to read so many rapid-fire subtitles that it makes it not fun. It feels more like cramming for an exam. But I mean, okay, so if you do that, that's actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like total immersion, because it's like you're there with Chris trying to cram for your exams and figure out what's going on in Biston Well. And if you want to get like fully immersed, you can make plans with a friend to go swimming.
Daryl is asking what it would take to make the story enjoyable, be it more episodes, or would that just increase the pain?
Okay, honestly, I think Tomino needed I'd go into this in the article I wrote about Garzey's Wing a couple years back. I think he needed an editor, number one. Number two, because I mean, everybody, like, we have like this myth of the auteur, where it's like, oh, there's like one person that's the brains behind this thing. But I mean, even famous, like, quote unquote auteurs like David Lynch still has like Sabrina Sutherland and Mark Frost, like, kind of reining him in at times, being like, you shouldn't, let's not do this. Let's make it make some semblance of sense. So I think he needed an editor, number one. And number two, I honestly do think more episodes, probably, like the first, like I had mentioned in the summary, that entire like almost 5 slides, I think, was the first 3 minutes of the show. And if it had a little bit more time to breathe, maybe he could have worked with another screenwriter on it too, to kind of be like, oh, hey, because the universe of Biston Well, I think it's legitimately like interesting and cool. It's just really hard to appreciate it when you've got so much going on happening at once. He is, like Land of Obscusion just said, he's like an old school pulp author. And I really wish some of his novels, besides the Gundam ones, would get translated and released to other languages, because I would really like to read them. I'm not a huge fan, but I do think he's a very interesting guy, and I really enjoy a lot of his work.
All right. I think that's about it. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
This was seemed to be a very popular topic. Cool. Well, you have a pleasant rest of your day. I'm happy that you decided to do this panel for us.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.